You're listening to Dem Boyz Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Joe Valle and Shane Carter.
Ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros, thank you for listening to the Dem Boyz Podcast. My name is Joe Valle. That's at Amor Cup of Joe on Twitter. And joining me today, as always, one of the hardest working guys on NFL Twitter, Shane Carter. That's at Shane Carter TX. What's up, Shane, and how's it going?
It's going good, as always.
Perfect. We're almost there. 2 weeks away to the start of the 2020 NFL season. Training camps are getting real juicy. Plenty of fun videos, fun storylines going on. Just last week, we were talking about the unfortunate injury to Gerald McCoy, and literally the day after our podcast, he was actually released. So the Cowboys freed up more than $3 million in cap space by releasing defensive tackle Gerald McCoy. They also freed up more space, $7.1 million, by restructuring Trysten Smith, our left tackle's contract. Now, I've seen reports out there that the Trysten Smith restructure was more for a long-term Dak deal to give them an offer next year. But there's also talk about another player out there that we've talked about before. Not sure this year, but we definitely talked about him in the past. Earl Thomas, all-pro safety from the Baltimore Ravens, now former Baltimore Raven. So Shane, this story's kind of weird. We know that, he's turning into like some sort of like a locker room, drama queen. Maybe it's taken out of context, but, there was a fight in practice that stems from him not going to meetings and not taking it seriously. And one of his defensive teammates, just got extremely mad at him because Earl Thomas blew a coverage. Basically what I was reading was, he was mad because he was like, hey, if you would have come to the meetings and to film, then you would have been able to know the plan. You would have been there. And Earl Thomas was just kind of blowing it off like, oh man, it's practice. Like, who cares? And then that's where the fight started. Since then, the Ravens have released him. He seems to have voided his contract. He's now a free agent and he's out there and any team can pick him up. And many reporters are saying that the Cowboys are the number one team in line. But recently, the team's been asked, especially Mike McCarthy, and he has not said that there's specific interest in Earl Thomas himself. But, the Cowboys are always open to adding more players to their team. So, Shane, just kind of wanted to get your thoughts. Not a lot has happened since Earl Thomas has been released. So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on his actual, or on why he was released. Like, do you think that the Ravens should have done this? Should they have worked through it? And would you still like to have Earl Thomas on the team knowing that these issues may be following him? Maybe it followed him from Seattle to Baltimore, and maybe it's going to follow him to whatever team he ends up in, maybe here in Dallas.
Well, to answer your first question, I think it's important to remember that this ain't the first time he's got an altercation with the Ravens. If you remember, about a year ago after they lost to the Browns, he got into it with their nose tackle, Brandon Williams. So this isn't the first time he's had issues with the defense. And as far as like the missing meetings go, I think a lot of times when you have like these future Hall of Famers and these multi-year vets, after a while they can just kind of get the grasp of what they're doing. But the younger guys trying to make the squad or trying to take that next step are taking it a lot more serious. Earl Thomas is not at the same level he once was during the Legion of Boom days, but he's still considered at least one of the better safeties in the league. But I don't think that warrants him missing practice, missing meetings, or anything like that. But I also don't think that he was completely happy there. If you remember back then, he wanted badly to go to the Cowboys. I think he kind of settled for the Ravens because, they were still a good team. They would pay him what he was asking, or at least close enough to it. But I don't think he was totally happy there. And the fact that the Dallas Cowboys won't seem to go away from his radar just says that's where he wants to go. And, there's no saying that, you can go as far away as you want, but you're never going to, leave your home, at least not with your heart. I don't know the exact words of it. But I think, he wants to come home. He's from Texas. He's based in Austin. I think if he didn't go to the Cowboys, the Texans would be the next best bet. I think he really wants to come home. Would I have him on my squad? Absolutely. You can't tell me that pairing him with Xavier Woods in the secondary, which needs playmakers, would not just dramatically improve with Earl Thomas back there.
Right, and HaHa hasn't had the best camp so far.
He should change his name to LOL, because apparently, according to reports, he's just not the same guy he was. That's disappointing because I was a big HaHa Clinton Dix fan, and I was hoping we could see a more Pro Bowl version of him. But, all the reports coming out of camp and even people I've talked to have said he's been either like disappointing or average, or he's just not the same guy he once was. I honestly think we talked about, players switching to safety, like Chidobe Awuzie or that rookie Reggie Robinson. They also got Daryl Worley, who's played all over the secondary. He's kind of the Tyrone Crawford of the secondary. But safety, for some reason, is still a huge need on this team, and the Cowboys either ignore it because they don't believe it's important, which I know is true, but they just seem to think that they can just get by with average safety play and above average cornerback play. But right now they have average cornerback play with a couple of potential really good players. I mean, they have a solid nickel cornerback, but they have average cornerback play, so they can't afford below average safety play.
Right, and fans are wanting the Cowboys to make a splash play. He's an all-pro player. He has been for pretty much his entire career. You can argue that he didn't have a very good year last year with the Ravens, but, I mean, the Ravens were a great team, so there really wasn't much that he could do to stand out. They had great offense. Their defense was pretty good. I've seen people knock him for not having the best year last year and making that meme, being a fullback for Derrick Henry or whatever. But I would love him. I would love him to be on the team. Welcome him home. It seems like literally every good safety in the league wants to be a Cowboy, right? Jamal Adams, Earl Thomas. We'll see if he gets signed.
James.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take all three of them. I would love to see him. Now, okay, if he did come to the Cowboys, where would you see him? Would you pair him with Xavier Woods, so you'd put him at strong safety and have Xavier up in the free safety, or maybe vice versa? Or would he take Woods' spot? I don't think he can do that, though, because I'm pretty sure Woods is the best safety we have on the team.
Woods is the best safety they have on the team, and you don't want to replace him. What you want to do is put Earl Thomas in his best place to play, which is at the single high safety, the free safety position. Xavier Woods is good enough at the strong safety position, and he's a good enough tackler to play that spot. I don't think you want to put Earl Thomas in a position he don't really play, especially when you could get Pro Bowl level results if, at the very least, we can get to him at close enough to that level. Xavier Woods right now is their best safety, by far. It's not even close. So you want to make sure that you have another good player to pair with him. You don't want to move players around where they're unfamiliar. Xavier Woods has played both the 1 and 2 safety spots, free and strong. And, Earl Thomas is going to be a Hall of Famer, strictly playing free safety. So I'd keep him there.
If the opportunity's there, I think the Cowboys should take it and, offer him a contract. You made room for it. So obviously, they're either, I mean, why do you make room for a player if you're not thinking of signing someone? Maybe it's just for security in case of COVID and they got to sign someone real quick, or maybe they have someone else in mind, maybe on the defensive line, but we'll see what happens. We'll keep you guys posted. If there's any breaking news, we'll go ahead and post it to the Facebook page and then come back here next week and we'll discuss it on the show. Any last words you want to say on Earl Thomas?
Yeah, I don't necessarily fully believe that they restructured Tyron Smith's contract to extend Dak in next offseason because they already expected to have around $40 million in cap space anyway. And depending on who all they were going to keep next year, who all they could restructure, and like I said, the salary cap ain't real. It's all designed to underpay players and, keep them at a certain pay level. So they already had enough money to pay for Earl Thomas. Pay for Dak. This is a move to make one more splash. I truly believe that. They're going to look into Earl Thomas. I think they still want him. I think Earl Thomas still wants to be there. And this time, it won't cost him much.
Right, agree with you there. I don't think it was for Dak either. I think they're trying to make a move, so at least that's what I'm hoping for. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but the defensive line is making a couple shuffling moves now that defensive tackle Gerald McCoy is no longer on the team. Hopefully he comes back. There's, always opportunity for him to come back next year, but we'll see what happens there. Now for this year, there's plenty of opportunity for second-year player Trysten Hill and rookie Neville Gallimore, both on the defensive line and the interior defensive line. During a conference call with Dallas media on Saturday, defensive line coach Jim Tonsula shared his excitement in what he's seen from the second-year pro out of UCF. He said, quote, Trysten Hill has been doing some really good things. I'm tickled to death and how hard he's working both mentally and physically, and how hard he's working in the meeting rooms. So it seems like he's, getting his mindset right. I think last year there was a lot of questions on his heart and how much he actually wanted to be a professional NFL player. At least that's what I got from a lot of the reports out there. He didn't really see the field at all, so I'm sure his physical performance wasn't there either. But everything so far, coming from Tom Sula sounds positive in regards to Trysten Hill. So where do you see Hill this year, Shane? Do you have some hope that he can, bring some positive news to this team, some much needed positive play on the defensive line?
Well, as far as the reports coming out about Trysten Hill from Jim Tomsula, I mean, do you want him to say he's going to be terrible or he's lagging or something like that? I'm sure he's going to do better.
But I mean, he could definitely, not praise him. We've seen coaches not praise players. They're not going to talk bad about them, but from everything he's saying, he seems very positive. Is what I mean.
Well, he's probably turned it around because it was hard to be, as disappointed as Trysten Hill was last year. So there's nowhere to go but up. I have no doubt that Trysten Hill was probably a little miffed at the lack of playing time and the fact that he was a second-round pick, and everyone in the Dallas Cowboy media, fans, and everybody is just kind of down on him, and everyone's praising these moves they're making for these other defensive tackles, and they drafted Neville Gallimore, who I liked at Oklahoma more than I like Trysten Hill out of UCF. So I take what coaches say about players with a grain of salt because they don't want to say something out there that's going to diminish their confidence. They want to instill confidence in them. I take reports from, journalists and analysts who are actually at practice who tell us what they see. And generally they're saying they've seen improvement, He hadn't been a world breaker, okay? Alden Smith's been, some people called him a world breaker. He's still an athletic freak. But Trysten Hill, like I said, it was hard to be worse than he was last year in terms of his value to the team and where he was drafted. So I would expect him to do better or at least show a little difference in play. And the fact that, Gerald McCoy, like you said, is out for the year, it's going to be up to him and Neville Gallimore, two young guys, first and second year players, to step up. I think they are going to give Trysten Hill every opportunity to win the job because you don't invest second round picks in players you don't plan on playing. I'll believe when I see it.
All right. Well, what about Neville Gallimore? You're very high on him. I haven't seen much in reports that he's doing, as flashy as a job as some other players. I know you love him in college, just like you said. I liked him too. I thought it was a great pick. Who do you think will end up playing or end up getting the bigger role this season?
In terms of who gets the bigger role, I would feel more comfortable starting with Tyron Crawford and like easing in both these guys because they're both still young players. Trysten Hill didn't play a whole lot last year. Neville Gallimore is a rookie, and I would have more confidence starting Tyron Crawford there. I believe Neville Gallimore is going to get his opportunity just because he was a very athletic a very athletic guy for his size. He was at 6'2", almost 310. He had a lot of bend and speed in him. So I was high on him, but I also watched a lot of film on him during the draft process whenever people were talking about him. He was, Oklahoma, let's face it, Oklahoma hadn't been known for their defense in a long time, right? But every year they seem to put out at least one solid player in the draft from the defense. Every now and then they have one, and I'm hoping that he's the guy. I believe they're going to give Trysten Hill more chances just because he is technically the vet. So he's 1 year in, and they want to believe that second-round pick, the de facto first-round pick, was worth something. I would just feel more comfortable starting the season with Crawford at the 3, Poe at the 1, and Griffin and Tank on the outside. That would be who I'd be most comfortable with who they got on the defensive line to start with.
I'd love to get young on the whole team, especially the defense. We're already young in the secondary, and to get young and better on the defensive line is going to be great. We all love, Tyron Crawford, but it's getting close to being time. So we gotta find someone to be able to step in, be that role, or be even better than what he was before in his early days. So. Anything else you want to speak on these two young players?
Okay, I'm not. I think people think that I'm being negative about Trysten Hill. I just wasn't a big fan of his out of college. Obviously, I always hope I'm wrong about players I didn't like whenever they're drafted by the Cowboys. Always hope I'm wrong because I was wrong about Leighton Vander Esch because he was really good and I wanted somebody else. I've been right also. Every now and then, you're right about someone that you don't like. It happens. But with him, I hope I'm wrong. I don't see it with him, but again, we'll see.
Right, and to be fair, you haven't been wrong. You've been 100% right so far. So I think most people could agree that it was a bad pick, but hopefully you can turn it around. All right, next segment. This is something new, something fun that we're going to be doing going forward. If you guys enjoy it, we'll keep it around. If you don't, we'll try something else. This is going to be called the Fantasy 5, and it's brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. Come #PropUp on Thrive Fantasy this season. Thrive Fantasy is a daily fantasy sports app for player propositions.
Use promo code Dem Boyz, capital D, capital B, just like on our tagline, and you'll receive an instant $20 bonus. That's again, promo code Dem Boyz, capital D, capital B.
Use that promo code and get yourself $20 if you like to play fantasy sports, but you can win some money this time. So go ahead and check out our sponsor for this segment, Thrive Fantasy. So what we're going to be doing for the Fantasy 5 is talking fantasy football for about 5 minutes. This week, we're going to talk the two biggest players on the team fantasy-wise, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. We'll start off with our quarterback, Dak Prescott. He is the consensus number 52 pick in this year's draft, and looks like he is the consensus number 3 quarterback overall in standard leagues. Shane, I know you love Dak. I said in a couple episodes before, if you get Dak in the league, he can win you that league. He had a great 2019. He scored at least 25 fantasy points in 9 games and averaged 23.9 fantasy points per game for the season. He has 3 great weapons in Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Ezekiel Elliott, and now standout rookie receiver CeeDee Lamb. The offensive line could be a question mark, but we're hoping for the best. It's probably going to be fine, but we'll see what happens in the interior line, and hopefully Tyron Smith stays healthy because once he's out, anything can happen. And then we also have your guy Blake Jarwin, who could be a valuable weapon for him. So I'm extremely high on Dak. I don't know if I would draft him at the ADP that he's going at. He's kind of high for me. I like picking quarterbacks later. But if he fell a little bit, I would be ecstatic to get Dak Prescott. So just kind of wanted to get your quick takes on Dak's fantasy outlook, Shane. Is he a player that you would target, or is he a player that you would wait for and try to get value if he falls a round or two?
Well, it depends on your fantasy strategy. My strategy is always, I don't pick a quarterback until round 6 at the earliest. I always load up on running backs, a tight end, a couple of receivers, because those are the players who, get like the meat and potatoes of your team. quarterbacks, generally everybody has one starting quarterback that they know they can get 15 to 20 points on every week, and they have a backup guy who is just going to fill in for the bye week, essentially, right? I like the idea of him being the third-ranked fantasy quarterback because I think we all know that the top two are Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. What makes Dak an intriguing fantasy option is not only does he have all the receivers you mentioned, but he does have that running ability. We all know how a stiff-arm Washington football team defenders. And that just adds another element to the game that people just kind of overlook. He's not the fastest quarterback, but he's mobile and he's strong. And like you said, he has Blake Jarwin to throw to. He's got the three receivers. He's got his two-headed monster in the backfield with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. So if you're going to use a top 5 round, so first 5 round on a quarterback, Dak is one of those quarterbacks you consider. I'm not saying he's a lock. I think the only locks in the top 5 rounds you pick quarterback on are Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, but he's one of those quarterbacks along with Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson that you consider for one of your first 5 picks.
Right. I'm a little higher on Dak. I think he's definitely a lock. For last year, I had Lamar Jackson on 2 teams, and both leagues that I had Lamar Jackson, I won the league decisively. Like, it wasn't even close. But this year, I'm not sure if he can repeat that insane performance. We saw Patrick Mahomes, he had his historic year, and then he came down a little bit. He was still, amazing. But I'm not sure if Lamar Jackson is going to be able to, put up the same numbers that he did his MVP season. I'm sure he's still going to have an excellent year, but I think he's going a little too high for me. And if you are going to reach for a quarterback in one of the early rounds, like you said, in the first 4 rounds, most, back in the day, right, when we first started playing fantasy, nobody knew any better, and you pick a quarterback in the first round. People know how to play fantasy now, and they wait now. But if Dak Prescott is there in the 4th or early 5th, I might pull the trigger if I'm comfortable with what I have in like a couple receivers, a running back. If I go like 3 receivers, then no, I'm definitely going to have to pick a running back. But if I got 2 receivers and a running back, hell, I might take, the possible number 1 overall quarterback in the 4th round. That's my take there. Now, Ezekiel Elliott, presumably a top 5 running back, kind of a no-brainer. If he's there, you pick him. So this is kind of a discussion to where, how high would you draft him? So for example, Shane, if you're the number 1 pick, would you take Christian McCaffrey or Ezekiel Elliott? I'm pretty sure those are the 1 and 2 for in most people's eyes. I'm looking here, the consensus on all fantasy websites, he's actually the number 3 running back. They have Saquon. Sorry, my bad, Saquon. I can't believe I forgot about you. So they got Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and then Ezekiel Elliott as the 1, 2, 3, and Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara as the 4 and 5, respectively. Would you take him as the number 1 overall running back, or are you more in the camp to where there's a lot of heads to feed, a lot of mouths to feed on this offense, and you'd rather go with a Saquon or a Christian McCaffrey to where they're actually the focal point of the offense?
Well, if you're in a league where you get points per reception, then you want to consider Zeke for the top pick, just because him and McCaffrey are not only threats out the backfield, but they're also threats as receivers. He's got just under 200 catches for his career. He's got over 5,000 rushing yards. He's got, just in terms of total career touchdowns, he's got, I wrote that down somewhere, sorry. He's got 48 total touchdowns. And, each year he keeps putting up solid numbers, like really big-time numbers. I think the fear with Ezekiel Elliott this year is that Dak is going to be more of a focal point, and he's going to, feed everybody. His receivers, his tight end, and his other running back, Tony Pollard, is going to get a lot of looks as well. I think people, are scared off by that, but that just means that he's going to get all the carries. He might not get as many receptions, but he'll get all the carries in that. I think, I would take Saquon number 1. First of all, I think my running back rankings might be a little different than most people. After him, I would actually take Derrick Henry second, just because I believe Derrick Henry is more important to his offense than Ezekiel Elliott is to his offense. And then I go guys like Zeke, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, and it goes from there, right? So I think depending on what kind of league you're in, It's gonna rely heavily on if you want a receiving running back or if you want a guy who's gonna do it all, and how you rank him yourself.
Right, I see it that way too. If you're in PPR, you most likely would take McCaffrey over Zeke just because of the pass catching. Not necessarily ability is better than Zeke, but the opportunity is going to be there more than Zeke. Saquon too, maybe. Hell, you could even say Kamara. You can have him up there, but for me, I would have him as the number. I mean, if Zeke is there at number 1, you know he's not gonna bust. There's no way he's gonna bust. The only year he ever technically busted was when, Roger Goodell just had a vendetta against him. Even that year, he finished, I'm pretty sure, at the top 10 running back. Now,
yeah, he still led the league in yards per game.
Right. And again, the same thing that I said with Lamar Jackson. Christian McCaffrey had an amazing year. I don't know if he'll be able to repeat that amazing year. I'm sure, for a quarterback, it's much easier to. And running back, they take so much punishment. And I don't know. He has Teddy Bridgewater, so the quarterback play will be better. So maybe the defense won't be able to just focus on Christian McCaffrey. But even last year, when they knew he was getting the ball, he still was unleashed. So I'm probably a homer.
Something that's gonna really affect Christian McCaffrey's fantasy play this year. Not a whole lot is that the Panthers, when they got Matt Rule, they re-upped their offense. Not only did they get a new quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater, who I don't really consider to be a fantasy superstar, but they added a new receiver, Robbie Anderson, on the outside. They had DJ Moore, who's a budding star receiver, and Ian Thomas, who's an athletic tight end, who kind of like Jarwin had to play behind an aging vet, but really shined in his moments that he got. I think that might hamper him a little bit, but I still think McCaffrey, like you said, is probably the top.
Right. I mean, if I get the number 1 pick and Zeke's there, I can't pass him up. Come on, this is a Cowboys podcast. I can't pass him up. I'll probably regret it and see McCaffrey scoring 30 points a game, but can't pass up Zeke, man. All right, well that will wrap up this episode of Dem Boyz Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Dem Boyz Podcast. Keep an eye out for clips of the show in case you can't catch full episodes. Thanks again, and go Cowboys.
Special thanks to Julio Carrillo for intro and outro music. Find him on Facebook and YouTube under Julio Carrillo Music.